and welcome to the Morning Journal. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Rachel, and we have a lot coming up this week, so if you'd like to keep track of us during the show, you can find us on Twitter or Instagram at The Morning Journ, or watch us live on upstart.net.au or in the Agora.
I'm excited to see what the show has in store for us. Let's take a look.
This week on the Morning Journal, Rachel and Sarah sit down with the Trobe Lecturer Ivo Burum to discuss Mojo Journalism. Kate reviews A Quiet Place and talks about the upcoming season of Westworld on Entertainment Talk. Scarlett heads over to the break room in Collingwood and gives us an update on the news. Jasmine heads over to Komodo Skye to get her hair done and then stops by in studio to dish out relationship advice. We have a great show for you, so stay tuned to the Morning Journal.
It seems like we have a really great show coming up, but for now let's go to Scarlett with the headlines. Thanks, Scarlett.
Thanks very much. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has admitted fault this morning for not calling the Royal Commission into banking sooner. His statement was less of an apology as it was an explanation for his actions. The explanation comes after Financial Services Minister Kelly O'Dwyer refused to admit fault by the government for failing to act quickly against the misconduct of the big banks yesterday. Yesterday on the ABC's Insiders, Financial Services Minister Kelly O'Dwyer refused to concede to failing to set up the Royal Commission into banking. The minister listed other measures the government took to combat the misconduct of the big banks, but failed to answer why the Turnbull government was so late to call a Royal Commission. Mrs O'Dwyer said the revelations of the Royal Commission so far have been appalling. As President Donald Trump's unprecedented summit meeting with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un approaches, worrying predictions are being made for what might come of the meeting. Japan remains suspicious of Kim Jong-un's intentions behind the meeting and is urging America not to make any deals with North Korea. President Trump accepted Kim's invitation to meet for negotiations over North Korea's nuclear weapons. Many fear that the negotiations will add to the tensions between North Korea and the United States, with Kim's reluctance to the notion of nuclear disarmament. Also causing doubt for peaceful negotiations is President Trump's newly appointed U.S. National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Trump stated that time will tell what will come of the summit meeting. The chemical weapons investigation team reached Douma to collect samples of the chemical weapons attack on civilians, killing 40 people and injuring hundreds in Syria. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons were finally granted access to the area after arriving in Syria a week beforehand. The rescue workers on the scene reported government aircrafts dropping toxic chemicals on Douma on the 7th of April. Symptoms of those infected include foaming at the mouth, blue skin and lips, corneal burns and convulsions. Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad and his government's military ally Russia say that they were not responsible for the attack, claiming that the attack was staged. The inspectors investigating the attack will focus on taking biomedical samples of the injured and the dead, as these are the most indicative to identifying the chemicals used in the attack. Russian troops were believed to have been in the area a week before the OPCW experts. There were concerns from the UN ambassador of the OPCW that the evidence of the attack may have been tampered with. Jenny Rosen's murder has gone unsolved for 36 years, and Victorian police are now offering $1 million reward to find the killer. The mother of four was stabbed several times in Commission Flats in Richmond, while her 11-month-year-old daughter. Jenny Rose was last seen getting her two daughters, aged 7 and 9, and her 11-year-old son get ready for school at 8:30 a.m. She was found dead just hours later at 12:30 p.m. by her two daughters when they returned home from school for lunch. Jenny Rose was separated from her husband and was establishing herself as a single parent. Detective Inspector Tim Day worries that if more information is not given, the case could slip into the abyss and never be solved. Jenny Rose's children are desperate for some closure on their mother's tragic and horrific murder. The perpetrator was thought to be known by Jenny Rose, as there appeared to be no forced entry into the apartment. Anyone who might have a shred of information or knows someone who might have any information is urged to call the police. Her son remembers her as a devoted mother and a strong, independent woman. And finally, a newly discovered species of ant shows how they're willing to put their body on the line, quite literally, to protect the colony. The exploding ant, found in Southeast Asia, explodes when it senses danger, killing itself in the process, while also covering predators with toxic yellow goo. The exploding ant is red and looks mostly like any other ant, but carries glandular sacs of deadly yellow fluid. As it is the newest species of exploding ant discovered since 1935. And that's all for the news today. Isn't it amazing that they're still discovering new species of ants, despite how long, we've been studying the environment and also science.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leaps and bounds in science and in
lots of leaps and bounds. Well, actually, yesterday there was an article from the BBC about the new sort of liver in a box, and instead of so much as freezing organs now for transplants for patients, it actually keeps them alive, so to say. So it keeps them warm inside the box, and I think it's been shown to be 50% more effective.
Yeah, they tested 222 patients receiving liver transplants over Europe, and of that, the success rate of livers that were frozen on ice, which is sort of the classic. I think when we think of transplant, we think of
a little esky
full of some liver.
Yeah.
But they found using this new machine and keeping the liver active while it was waiting to be transplanted to the next person. That it was there was a much higher success rate when transplanting it into the body, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it said that scientists said the study could help reduce the significant proportion of people who die waiting for a new liver and potentially transform how organ transplants are carried out. So this is a really exciting study. This is a really great breakthrough with technology in hospitals.
In health.
It's going to help a lot of people.
Absolutely, and there was a huge jump in organ donations last year. I think it was one of the highest recorded in a very long time. So I think people are getting less reluctant to part with their bodily organs once they've passed now, which is got to be great for the for the health community.
It is.
And for hospitals and for people waiting for vital organ transplants.
Yeah, and about 20% of patients die while waiting for a liver transplant. So this is really going to help them.
Totally, and the liver, this machine pumps the liver and artificially keeps it in use, and that's just sort of a start. You were saying earlier that there was a heart.
Yes, there was an article by the Courier Mail about how in Queensland they've actually tried this with a heart, and that it was a pig heart, but it keeps the heart alive in the box, and so this could potentially be used for heart transplants as well, which is just amazing. So this could be applied to
livers,
any organ really.
Yeah.
It's great to see it evolving and them doing more research to help these types of issues instead of having people wait for their organs once they're failing, just to kind of let it be and just have that, be the way that they may pass.
Yeah, definitely.
And so there's obviously still a lot of research left to do, but this is just an amazing step in the right direction for medical research and science. And I actually did work experience at a medical department in Austin Hospital, and I got to see sort of everything that was going on behind the scenes, and they were doing stem cell research and all of these incredible things. But the sort of not so much frustrating part is that it does take a long time for them to get the funds to do these sorts of studies. And
not to mention for things like stem cell research, there's so much controversy against furthering that science. So people are restricting the funding based on moral issues, which I would say are somewhat unfounded, but people worrying that we will get too good at doing health and we'll be playing God.
Yes,
which
there's a lot of controversy around stem cell research, but I really do believe that anyone in medical research is just doing a fantastic job because they're doing it to try and help people.
Exactly.
And I think this machine is just incredible. But yeah, there's still research to be done, and what's been discovered and built so far is just amazing. So technology today is remarkable.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what these brings for those in need. Hopefully, we do save a lot more lives with this medical research. Now we're moving on to another inspirational topic, our Woman of the Week. Our Woman of the Week is Natalie McKenna, who is a lecturer here at La Trobe University, as well as the owner of Regeneration Limited, helping high-profile clients manage their online image. We have a recorded phone interview with her. Let's take a listen. Instagram has been ranked the #1 social media platform causing depression, according to the Royal Society of Public Health. Why do you believe this is the result they found?
I know the study, and it is exactly that. It's about FOMO, and it is about looking at perfect images of the bodies of others. The problem is that these are manipulated images. They're photoshopped. They're people with, there's a great backdrop. Sometimes it's a European holiday with a beautiful body that has been manipulated. Maybe they have even taken 200 shots to get the perfect image. And it's kind of not real. And people are looking at those images, and they might be sitting in the midst of a Melbourne winter, and they see a perfect body on a beach in the south of France. And that creates FOMO, fear of missing out, and also it can make people feel less than perfect themselves, because they're comparing themselves with that perfect yet manipulated image.
Do you believe there are negative effects for being too active on social media? If so, are these the only ones, or are there other things that can also be negative affecting our mental health?
There are many things that can affect our mental health, but looking at social media constantly can sometimes even cause an addiction, because we get so used to looking at something continuously that we've forgotten the art of being bored. And I think sometimes it's actually a really important thing to have a few gaps where we're not doing something constantly. Things like creativity, coming up with really great ideas for university projects or in your work, can sometimes come from creative moments. And I think that we actually need some gaps. We need some stillness to be able to come up with good ideas. Now, the problem with social media is some of us get addicted. We're used to, some people can't walk down the street without flicking through their feed. Now, that's when I think it's a problem. We always want to look at social media, and we find ourselves in withdrawal, because some people have those very real feelings when it's actually difficult for them to stop looking. And that's a problem for many, many reasons. It's not good for our mental health to be constantly engaged. Exactly. Like our parents had time to be bored. Our grandparents had time to be bored. And I think, depression's growing. I think it's not the only cause, but I don't think it helps us to be constantly connected.
Is there any advice you can give to young people on what not to share on their social media pages?
Yes. Look, I think that we really need to be very careful about what we share on our social media, because, we have to think how others are perceiving us. So how is our image being portrayed on social media? How are we looking? Is it going to affect our chances of employment at some point in our lives? So, one rule that I have personally is, I don't post any photos of me drinking excessively online. So, try not to portray an image that you're always partying, that you have alcohol in your hand in your photos at all times. Or, I had a client once who didn't know that there were images of her online with hardly anything on, and, alcohol in the hand, looking completely drunk. And I was trying to get her to connect with another client who thought that was inappropriate, so she missed out on some work. So those things are very real. So be careful about what you're posting. Be careful about what you say. Don't swear, or there are certain things you need to be careful of, because it may be perceived by a future employer as being a negative. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be real, but you do need to be very careful about your reputation. Really keep an eye on how you look online. Things stay online for a long time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Again, for our listeners, that was Professor Natalie McKenna, an academic specialist in strategic communication at La Trobe University. Thank you so much for that, Natalie.
Thank you, Sarah.
We have to be so careful nowadays on what we put on social media, because we can really just put anything on any platform, and it's quite dangerous, like we were discussing last week in the studio. Also, anyone can access this information so easily,
Absolutely.
as we've seen through the Facebook
Yeah,
saga.
exactly, absolutely. And people need to remember that once you've posted it, there is no erase, there is no delete. That button does not exist. It is there forever. So when you Google yourself, pictures that you posted for about 7 minutes about 5 years ago could still be there on the Google engine. So that's quite the dangers that people have to remember as well.
Absolutely, and you don't want to be posting something that you could regret. And Jasmine's topic of body image from 2 shows ago, people need to remember that photos can be deceiving to what the real person actually looks like. And of course you see all these magazines and things like that, and it's all very photoshopped, and I feel like that can also tie into a lot of mental illness that's prominent in young people, which Natalie was talking about. So people need to be wary of these illusions that are on social media.
Exactly right, Rachel. Some days I wake up and I check, social media. That's sometimes my main source of news. And when people have had these great weekends when I didn't really do much except for work or uni work and things like that. But that was a successful and happy weekend for me. But when I look at people who are gallivanting and going to all these amazing places that I've never been before, it really does make me feel like my life may not be as good as theirs, even though it might be behind closed doors. Mine might be better even, but just because that mental image of what they're doing might be perceived as better or more enjoyable, it makes me feel upset sometimes.
Yeah, like it could be a dreary day in Melbourne and then someone's over on the Gold Coast,
exactly,
drinking a cocktail,
even
and
just
putting
their
feet up, and you're just like, I've got uni.
Yeah, exactly. I've got uni for 8 hours, no break, and I packed myself one snack.
And we will be talking about mental illness in young people later, so we can bring up Natalie again, and she made a whole lot of important points, and it's really important for students at university to really remember how sucked in you can get to social media. I feel like that I often need a break from my phone and from my laptop, and it's just I need to put everything down and just have some time with my family and not stress about what I'm seeing on social media and worrying about what other people are posting and what I should be posting and my sort of image on social media.
Exactly right, Rachel. And I think that's some great advice for all the viewers out there that are students, even if you're not a student, but definitely take a break from social media, take a break from your phone, just live in reality, as over dramatic as that seems. But she's, absolutely right. I do it sometimes on the odd occasion, and it makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel a lot happier with what life actually is, and it makes me remember that I do have a pretty good one, and I should be grateful for that.
Yeah. Just go out and do something that makes you feel happy.
Exactly. We can take precaution as best as we can with our online presence. So as we talk about this topic a lot, it is just so important to remember. Now we have a cute little package from Jasmine, who visited Commodus J over the weekend for a new do. Let's see how she went.
Commodus J is an award-winning salon. George Gorgonis owns and runs the salon with over 9 years' experience behind him. I went in to visit the team at Commodus J for a fresh new look.
Hi, my name's George. I'm the owner of Commodus J hairdressing salon in Reservoir. Commodus J started now 3 years ago. It was a really kind of random thing that happened. Pretty much was working in bigger salons, then all of a sudden decided to take it out and go out on my own. In the end, we just got so busy we had to expand and go for a bigger salon. Our clients are mainly generally, I would say teenage to mums, but real funky sort of stylish people. I would say none of the daggy sort of stuff. It's really upper class, really nice, soft. I really enjoyed doing all my clients' hair. We train our team to be as best as they can be. Obviously it all started with myself, and I'm working on making the rest of the team just as good as me, as well as everyone's also very individual. I would say everyone kind of has their own skill, and I'm all up for that.
George is a very funky, friendly, enthusiastic person. He's never got a sad face, He's always happy, he's always chirpy, even when there's something going on, which everyone's got that. He's always, showing a good smile on his face, showing his clients that, life's great.
Well, he's just definitely the best boss you could have. He's heaps of fun, he's really understanding. He's really great.
George gave us some tips on what's on trend this season.
So the hair trends that are in at the moment, I would say, is a lot more natural sort of stuff, like really effortless looking styles, nothing too overdone. Anything dramatic these days isn't really the thing to go for. Something a lot more softer and natural is the way to go.
My favourite hair trend would be a messy look. A lot of people go for the messy beach waves.
I'm really enjoying a lot of pastel colours and peachy, pinky tones.
George gave me a gorgeous balayage look, a trend that's been popular with many of his clients. George explained to me that a warmer toned blend would suit my skin tone best.
So I'm actually going to give your hair a really awesome balayage with a really, really good blend. So when I tease it, it actually doesn't give you like those painted lines sort of thing. It's more so just really blended. So as you comb the hair down, all that teasing down, that's what blends the two colours together. Yeah, but this is going to look so hot. So we're going for like a really, really kind of like warm balayage, really natural sort of like looking, nothing too heavy. I think it'll really, really suit you.
At a reasonable price, you'll leave Kimonos J with amazing hair and a newfound confidence.
I've always loved hair. Hairdressing has been something that's been with me forever. I've been blow weaving hair since I was 7 years old. My mum was a hairdresser as well, so I kind of followed her tracks. And since then, I just knew that hairdressing was a thing for me.
Kimonos J is known for giving clients beautiful and on-trend hair.
I love seeing people really, really happy. I love making people happy, and that's something that's really important to me. Seeing that smile on someone's face when you've completed a whole new look for them. I mean, hair is one of the most important things in life. Having great hair really, really boosts the confidence of a person. I would love Kimonos J to become massive. Like, I don't think there's going to be one Kimonos J. I think there's going to be many. Yeah, that's my dream.
Kimonos J is open Tuesday 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday. Jasmine Petrovska, The Morning Journal.
Well, she looks fantastic, doesn't she, Rachel?
She does.
I just also went to the hairdressers and kind of got a very similar haircut done for myself. Just the irony.
It looks good.
Thank you.
It's on trend. And for those tuning into the show now, it is 9:22 a.m. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The Morning Journ, or watch us on upstart.net.au or in the big screen in the Agora.
Now, just as we do the news show here on campus, the journalism industry is rapidly changing and evolving due to technology development in today's society. To help students and potential journalists adapt to these changes, we are now joined in the studio with La Trobe's very own Coordinator of Media Industries and the author of Mojo, Dr. Ivo Burum. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm
Hello.
glad to be here.
So can you tell us a bit about mobile journalism? We've got your book here.
Mojo is, or Mojo stands for Mobile Journalism, Mojo, and it's a set of skills and literacies and a set of technologies that enables journalists and also citizen journalists to become autonomous storytellers. It enables them to tell stories from not only from different locations, but from a very different perspective, their own. And it's important because, for example, there are many marginalised areas around the world. I work with journalists from Syria and from Yemen and from Myanmar and lots of other places where having a mobile does two things. One, it enables them to get their stories out to the rest of the world. And two, it doesn't paint them as a target like a large camera would. So there's a great place for Mojo or mobile journalism.
And there's a lot of accessibility as well from mobiles. You can just film and upload in minutes, really.
Well, the great advantage of it is mobiles platforms. Mobiles are ubiquitous. There's 7.1 billion of them in the world, which is almost as many as people, and about 3 billion smartphones. So effectively, once we get the planning right and the formula right and the skills out there, we could have people reporting all around the world.
That's great. In the early 90s, you pioneered format self-taught television in Australia. Was this your motive behind the origin of Mojo?
Yeah, well, look, it's actually self-shot, right? It's called self-shot. And what we tried to do was to give, I was at the ABC, I was an executive producer at the ABC, and what we tried to do was to give ordinary Australians a voice on television from a very different perspective, from their own perspective. So what we did was, there were a lot of series. First one was a thing called Home Truths, where 20 Australian families were taught how to use little DV cameras. And we taught them how to use these cameras so they could report on their own lives, on what it was like to be a family, what it was like to look after old people, what it was like to have young people, what it was like to be a divorced families. And so it was very popular. It did really, really well. And our series after that, we went into a hospital and we did nurses at the Alfred Hospital. And that was pretty amazing. We taught some nurses to report on their own lives. Race Around the World, you might not remember that, but Race Around the World was a very popular series. That was one of those. And then we did it in an investigative form when the Canberra bushfires happened in 2003, and it was devastating. And so I went in and taught some people who were survivors of the fires to film their lives for the next 3 months, and we used their stories to publish on a series, nightly series I was doing. So on a Thursday night, we'd publish their amazing stories of living, having to put the family dog down, looking after elderly people that lost everything, and then we turned that material into an investigative documentary. And that was one of the advantages of mobile, is that or little DV cams. We could never afford to be there for that period of time to do that investigative documentary. But these people provided us the material. The great advantage today, though, is that in those days we had to do the editing. But today, those people could all do their own editing. And real diversity doesn't occur until you finish your own story. And that's the advantage of mobile. It enables people who have the skills to be able to finish their own stories. But that's where it came from. It came from, for me anyway, it came from those early years. And my Mojo program that I began rolling out in 2010, it was based on the lessons I learnt from those early, in part anyway, the lessons I learned from those early experiments.
And this can be spread across a lot of different platforms as well. And while that's positive, what would a negative be towards the craft of storytelling?
Well, look, it's been said that mobiles are going to mean the death of. It's an interesting question, that they're going to be the death of journalism and the death of storytelling. And look, the truth is, if you ask people involved in the Arab Spring, and in all the countries that revolted, that tried to get change in that region, a lot of that was originated through mobile broadcasts and mobile uploads and stuff. And if you would ask them today whether that was storytelling, a lot of those people would say that it wasn't storytelling, that in fact, what you needed to do was to be able to use that material to craft story around that material, and so that people could upload complete stories. What they did was uploaded footage to YouTube, and that footage was picked up by CNN and used as free filler by CNN. CNN and others, TV networks, including my own, used it as free filler. And I think that's wrong, right? And I think that flattens the material out. It completely flattens the material out. And what you need to do when you create your own stories is you're not flattening it out. You're giving the person their own voice. And that's what's required. So I think what's required around the mobile form is very real storytelling skill sets.
Yep. Absolutely, and you began by introducing Mojo into remote communities in the Australian outback. Why did you decide to start there?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of experience working in the outback with remote communities. I've been there since about 1989. I lived there for 3 years working with Indigenous people. But the reason I did it was because in 1987, as a government ploy, the government actually had, in 1985, it had launched AUSAT, which is our satellite, and in 1987, the Indigenous people said, we're a bit worried about the sorts of television programs that AUSAT's going to bring into our communities, and we would like to be able to cut the signal off and create our own programs. And so what the government did it was a political ploy really. They spent $3.2 million, which was a lot of money in those days, $40,000 per community, 80 communities, and they built these things called BRACs, Broadcast for a remote Aboriginal community scheme. It were towers, VHS machines, so people in the communities could make their own VHS programs and broadcast them to their own community, and they could make music and broadcast it to their own community by switching off the satellite. But they didn't offer any training, as the government usually does. There was no training. So the potential was enormous, but there was no training. So when I went there in '89, as part of my job, I was the head of television out there. I also then on the weekends would drive into these communities and I would help people. I would try and train them in my own time. And so many years later, in 2010, 9 and 10, when I began playing with mobile, I thought, no, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to give them the training that they didn't get, but I'm going to do it on these small devices to enable them to create their own programs. And it was really successful. It was we had 9 people in the first workshop, and all 9 sold their stories to commercial TV and to NITV. They got money for it, and 4 of them got journalism jobs in their communities. And the hardest thing in Indigenous communities is to go out and get trained. You can easily do that, but when you come back to your community, there may not be a job for you. So this was creating jobs in communities. We were very proud of the results.
That's amazing, and it's so important to give people in remote communities a voice as well, because they don't have the resources to do so.
You're absolutely right. And most news organisations, my own in particular, the ABC, would report by rote. So many news stories from Indigenous communities would be done. We'll ring someone up, and that would write the story. Very rarely did someone go into these remote communities, a journo, because it was a long way in there. You know, you had to drive for days or fly, and nobody ever had the time or the money. So this enabled people to create their own stories. And these first 9 they got offers for stringer work, fee for stringer work, ongoing fee for stringer work from the ABC and from NITV. And so I think it was that's the beginning of it for me.
Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come from this as well, as technology is just advancing all the time, and there'll be new resources for people in remote communities to use as well to make these stories and, you know.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
We just need to build a skill set, culturally sensitive skill sets, of course, around these technologies to enable people to understand the true potential of these technologies, so that they don't just go, oh, look at me having lunch, I'm having some witchetty grubs, which is good in itself.
Exactly.
But we want them to make politicised stories from their own communities to change their lives, because they now have a world audience.
Exactly right. Well, thank you for joining us in the studio today, Ivo.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure having you, and I hope more people become mobile journalists in our community.
Yeah, it's very important at the moment to start using this technology to our advantage, because it's growing for journalism and it's allowing us to have more access to stories and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that, Ivo.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
No worries.
So now we're moving on to another source of media. I think we're going to have another entertainment talk from Kate.
Hello and welcome back to Entertainment Talk. For this instalment, I am very excited because this week I went and saw A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place is the third directorial effort of John Krasinski and is about a dystopian world where creatures hunt any sound they hear. The film follows a family as they try and survive in this situation. The film stars John Krasinski, who you will no doubt recognise as Jim from The Office, and his wife Emily Blunt. They also have 2 children, one of whom is deaf and played by Millicent Simmons, who herself is also deaf. I thought it was so interesting to explore how a deaf person would fit into this world where you can't make a sound, and I thought her performance was one of the great parts of the film. I had seen Krasinski's other directorial effort called The Hollers a few weeks ago, so I was excited to see The Quiet Place and how he would fare in the horror genre. And when I saw this film, it absolutely exceeded all my expectations. I absolutely love this movie. One thing I love in movies is when they play with silence, and I thought this movie did this masterfully. You can clearly see that they got a lot of inspiration from the silent era of films, and I'll be talking about that a bit later. But in a world where the characters can't make a sound, the movie kind of flips it on the audience, and it was interesting to watch in a theatre because when the movie started, everyone was so loud, and then you sort of become super aware and sensitive to all the sounds you're hearing, which really works in the film's favour. They made all the loud sounds they put in there that much more shocking and really more scary than the jump scares that you'd often see in horror movies. The performances are amazing all around. The characters are saying so much without saying a word. Krasinski also wrote this film along with Brian Woods and Scott Beck, and I appreciated that this movie wasn't overly expositional. It established its world easily and kept the story simple yet so engaging. I couldn't recommend it more, so go see it in cinemas now. In TV this week, the highly anticipated second season of Westworld is finally back on your TV screens.
Did you ever stop to wonder about your actions? The price you'd have to pay if there was a reckoning. That reckoning is here.
If you're not familiar, Westworld is based on the 1973 movie of the same name, and it's set in the future, and it's about this unusual amusement park where rich patrons can come and live out their fantasies in a Wild West-esque world with the park's robotic hosts. However, these robots begin to develop a consciousness that's not unlike humans, and this is where we enter the show in Season 1. Season 1 of the show was very well received when it came out in 2016, and the second season has been highly anticipated ever since. The show is an all-star cast which features Evan Rachel Wood, Jeffrey Wright, Ed Harris, Thaddeus Newton, James Marsden, Anthony Hopkins, and many more. If you're interested in Western sort of stuff or futuristic AI sort of stuff, this very well may be the show for you, and lucky for you, it is coming out today, which is the 23rd, and you can catch it on Foxtel Express from the US at 11 a.m. Finally, for this week's retro review, I was looking to the inspirations John Krasinski had for The Quiet Place, which was the silent era film. So this week I'm going to be talking about Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. The 1921 film where Chaplin is playing his iconic character of the Tramp tells a heartwarming story of a man who takes in an abandoned child, though he himself is less privileged. The film follows as the kid grows up and the adventures they get into to survive. This was actually Chaplin's feature film debut, of which he wrote, directed and starred in. Chaplin being a comedic genius, the hijinks they get into are obviously hilarious, particularly when the kid goes around breaking windows and the tramp just happens to be walking around with glass to repair the windows, and he tries to push the kid away when a curious police officer begins to follow them. Much like The Quiet Place, the child acting in this movie is great. Jackie Coogan, who plays the kid, and Chaplin have a great chemistry, and you really feel the connection between them. The scene where the kid gets taken away from the tramp is heart-wrenching, but I was really disturbed to read that the child's father had actually taken him aside and threatened to send him to a workhouse if he didn't cry, which is why that moment feels so real. But Chaplin and the kid's chemistry is so powerful, and you really get the feeling that the tramp deeply cares about this child. The film is funny, the film is emotional, the film really is an example of what silent films have to offer. I understand that watching a 1920s silent film isn't something that the average young person would be enthusiastic about, but you never know, if you give it a chance you might love it. And you can watch it for free if you sign up for SBS On Demand. Well, that's all for this week. Stay tuned next week for another instalment of Entertainment Talk.
I actually really love Entertainment Talk, and I saw A Quiet Place a couple of weeks ago and it was so good. I don't normally do horror movies. I try to avoid them because I scare so easily, and the thought of being in a cinema with surround sound is just my nightmare. But I went to see it because I think for the cinematography and just the concept in general, it's so interesting. It was just something I couldn't miss.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see it. I'm a huge Emily Blunt fan, love thrillers, love horrors. It's definitely right up my alley. I'm very excited to see what Kate has recommended this week and has in store for us.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't actually find it too scary. I thought it was going to be terrifying because it's so quiet and there's barely any dialogue in the whole movie. But it was just fascinating.
Right,
it was fascinating
to see.
And the concept, I think what really makes a good horror movie is a good idea.
Oh, absolutely.
A good plot. And the idea of this family living in silence is just incredible, and how they deal with that. And it just builds so much suspense.
Absolutely.
And it is horrifying, but it does it in such a clever way.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a must-see.
I feel like any horror or thriller that has an original idea is always better because they always do the same thing over and over. So this is something that hasn't been done before, and I think that's why it's going to do really well for itself.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Speaking of really fascinating, let's head over to Scarlett for find out what's making news headlines here in Melbourne. Thanks, Scarlett.
Thanks very much, girls. So if you're tuning in from Melbourne, you'll be pleased to know that the fog is beginning to slowly clear out there after causing terrible visibility of just 50 metres this morning, especially on the roads. So hopefully you were driving carefully to work this morning. So today should turn into a clear one and reach up to 28 degrees Celsius, a welcomed warmer day as winter continues to creep in. Actor Vern Troyer, best known for his portrayal of Mini-Me in Austin Powers, has died yesterday at the age of 49. While no cause of death was given, the family said in a statement on social media that depression is a serious issue and to always be conscious that someone else might be suffering around you. The elite wheelchair women's London Marathon has been won by Australian athlete Madison De Rosario. She takes home this win along with a gold from the T54 Commonwealth Games last week. Malcolm Turnbull was slammed for texting during a speech by the British Prime Minister Theresa May during a Commonwealth summit. Prime Minister Turnbull has not yet released an explanation of what he was typing on his phone, but I would put my money on Twitter. Ladies, what do you think?
Maybe he was checking on the new Mark Zuckerberg stuff on Facebook. Or maybe he was deleting his Facebook because he didn't want Mark Zuckerberg spying on him.
Potentially. He could have been looking up good restaurants around there. Maybe he'd just finished a big international flight and was really fanging for a good meal.
Whatever he would have, been doing must have been very important, clearly,
Who
obviously.
do you think that Malcolm Turnbull follows on Twitter? Like unexpected follows, maybe.
Beyonce.
Beyonce and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
You can't not follow them. Do you really have social media if you don't follow those two?
I mean,
they're very important.
I'm just thinking if I follow either of those people, I follow The Rock.
I was going to say maybe like just John Cena, maybe just WWE wrestlers. He's got like a huge list of people that he just watched.
They're doing very world-changing things, them three, all of them. You got to be tapped with the people that are really making a difference.
Absolutely.
In society.
I actually went to the Melbourne City Wrestling on Saturday night in Thornbury.
Oh, how was that?
It was big. It was a huge event. There were, I don't know, like 3 big international fights, and one of them was with a well-known Melbourne wrestler. And it was my first live wrestling in Melbourne, and it was awesome.
That's great.
Very exciting. Well, thanks for being on, Scarlett. We love chatting to you.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. And for those tuning in now, it is 9:42 a.m. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at The Morning Journ, or watch us on upstart.net.au or on the big screen in the Agora.
Now for a little bit more fun after Scarlett, we're joined with another one of our fellows, Jasmine, who will be answering your questions. That's right, about relationships. Thanks for joining us, Jasmine.
Hello. So I have a new segment. It's called Ask Jazz, and it's a relationship segment when you can get on Twitter at The Morning Journal and tweet us with the hashtag AskJazz and ask me your relationship questions, or, give me a rant, and, I can tell you, you need to dump that boy, or, if you've got anything you want to ask me, please feel free. We do have some live tweets up here for us today that I can answer live on air. So we've got questions here from at Average Face, who has said, how can I get my boyfriend to be less sarcastic when we fight? Okay, so my advice is when you're having a little heart-to-heart moment, just be like, hey, listen, it really bugs me when we're arguing that you're not taking it seriously, because I feel like it's important to communicate well when we're fighting or arguing, because it's just important to take these things seriously, because if you're not taking them seriously, how do you know where the relationship's going to go? So my advice is sit him down, talk to him and say, hey, look, it upsets me because these things are important. I want to talk to you about these things, and you'll probably find that your partner's probably doing this as a defense mechanism to avoid fighting with you because he doesn't want to fight. So just tell him that, it's important to be honest and open with your feelings, and that comes when you're fighting or when you're not fighting. So for our second tweet that we received, this one comes from, hold on a second, I can't read it. Sorry, guys. I don't have my glasses. Okay. Can someone tell me what the tweet says? I can't read it.
It says, how important is a family with your long-term partner?
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, a relationship with your long-term partner's family.
Okay. So that really depends on person to person, because if your partner doesn't have a good relationship with his family, it's less important. But if your partner does and he finds it important that he or she finds it important that you communicate with his family, then it's definitely important. You don't have to be best friends with your parent-in-laws, you know. You don't have to be buddy-buddy, but it's important to ask them how they are, what they're doing. It's just polite. Also, like if you're in a long-term relationship and you're moving out with your partner, like that relationship with the family can like die down a bit because you now have your independence with your partner, so the family's not as involved. I reckon popping in once a month to ask them how they are, giving them a call every 2 weeks maybe just to check in is a good idea. But if they're not close with their family, I wouldn't worry too much about getting involved with them.
The next one is about a break after 3 years. How does this person get over the grief?
First off, I think keep your chin up. These feelings don't last forever. They will pass. Avoid stalking them or looking at any of their social media because it'll just upset you. Maybe die down with the communication slowly so you're not like bluntly cutting them off, because I feel like that would really, really sting. As well as that, I think if you've got really amazing people in your life, which I'm sure this person does, talk to them, tell them how you're feeling. Don't bottle it up, because if you bottle it up, then you're on your own. And I think a really positive thing to do when you're going through a breakup is to communicate with the people around you. Tell them what you're feeling, how it's affecting you, because you're not going to feel any better if you're just keeping it to yourself. So yeah, if you've got people around you, talk to them, communicate, and that's it. That's all
The
I
next
can say.
one we've been tweeted from somebody saying, telling someone you're not interested. So the opposite problem here.
Ooh, it's a tough one, but I reckon you sit them down and you just say, look, I'm just not interested. But you'd say politely. It also depends on your relationship with this person. If you guys have had a long friendship, just tell them how much you value your friendship, how important the friendship is, and how you don't want to ruin it, and how you just don't feel the same way. However, if this person's just like come straight at you saying they're interested and you don't have a relationship with them, just cut them off. Tell them straight out, I don't like you that way. I'm sorry. Like,
I feel like that's something I struggle with as well. Like,
Yeah.
I hate hurting people or
100%.
or bringing down someone's feelings, and so
100%.
just to sort of bite the bullet and not let it go on longer than it generally would if you hadn't told them. I feel like if you don't just tell them straight out, then it's a lot more pain for that person.
Yeah, so hurting someone is never like a good feeling.
It's
ever.
never easy.
No.
No.
But I think the sooner you say it, the better, because you don't want to be accidentally leading them on or giving them the wrong impression, because then that just leads to conflict and issues, and you don't want that. So that would be my advice.
My outtake on it is I'm just a shitty, bad, very bad replier. Yeah, I just, if I'm not interested or if I just can't be bothered with it, I'm too scared to do anything, so I kind of just leave it. Like, you know?
Yeah. I think the worst thing you can do, though, is like ignore the person, because that's just going to hurt even more. I think the best thing you can do is be honest.
I know.
But I'm like the same.
But then if you're honest...
I feel you. You don't want to hurt them.
No, I can come across as too nice, like as if like, oh no, it's all right, you know? Even though it's really not, and I'm not interested at all, but I can't honestly say that, so I kind of go around it. So I just find it, you know what, like, I just can't reply. I can't do it. I can't do it. Someone else has to do it for me. Someone else has to unlock my phone. I can't do this right now. It's a bit much.
Thank you for joining us, Jasmine. I
No
feel
worries.
like I've personally learned a lot of how to deal with these sorts of situations.
Definitely,
Hope to see
100%.
you guys next week with some more advice.
Absolutely.
I'll bring my glasses next time so I can read them. Sorry, guys.
But for those maybe feeling a little bit of pent-up anger, possibly from their boyfriend being sarcastic, you should visit the break room in Collingwood, which is exactly what Scarlett did.
Let's take a look.
Down a little street in Collingwood, down what looks like an ordinary residential driveway, lies a hidden gem.
So the break room is a bit of an empty vessel, right? It's a nice big room here in Collingwood. It's got 4 walls like any other, but at one end of the room is a nice big brick wall. And what we do is we give you a nice big crate full of crockery. You get to take that crockery, just grab one of those coffee mugs, pelt it at the wall just to get rid of any of that stress that's been lying around.
The break room is a little bit of thug therapy, a safe space for you to take out some suppressed rage on unwanted crockery.
You feel amazing because you've just been in a room, loud music, smashing glass everywhere. It's just something way out of your comfort zone. That when you come out, you're like, whoa, I'm a bit of a new person. This is great.
The break room was created to help individuals deal with difficult emotions like anger and stress. In this little room, some huge issues are being dealt with.
People usually come in for like one of three reasons. So there's adrenaline, so folks just looking for something to just get a little bit loud, fire off that adrenaline on a Friday night. We also get heartbreak, so lots of breakup, because that's a really tough time no matter who you are and no matter how you slice it. So this is a bit of an excuse to just get a little bit loud, get a little bit reckless without being that crazy bitch, right? And the third reason is more just about like that stress and that catharsis about getting rid of that stress. You're kind of just tired of eating and drinking your feelings. This is a place where you can actually vent that anger without having to just sit down and rationalize it. You're just like, no, I'm just angry because my job sucks and I've got to go there again tomorrow.
The break room operates on a belief that all feelings are valid and that it's important not to ignore the unpleasant ones.
I'm adamant that anger and stress are an emotion that should be felt just as much as happiness and joy and sadness and all the others. It gives people an opportunity to actually not have to rationalize it, not have to process it or deal with it. They can just turn things up to 11, pull out all the stops, get angry about whatever it is that has been grinding their gears, and you feel like $1 million.
This has been Scarlett Maloney for the Morning Journal.
The break room looks like a place I should personally be visiting as of late. I've been really struggling trying to balance, work and uni and family life and social life. So it's really hit me hard. I need a bit of a break.
I just really like the idea of being able to smash things. Like, I feel like it would be therapeutic in a way.
Oh, 100%.
Just a nice little bit of sort of reserved chaos.
Yes,
exactly. Like ethical chaos.
You always need to let it out, just completely go nuts, and then it's all gone. All the stress from your system, well, not all of it, but most of it is just released into just that one or 100 hit.
Yeah. I mean, understandably though, because anger and stress is something a lot of university students are feeling at this time of the semester. We're right in the middle of it and we're getting all of these major assignments and, for those doing exams, they're leading up to their exams and it's all very hard to sort of balance.
Yeah, exactly right. There are, we're not the only two out there. I'm sure a lot of other fellow La Trobe students are feeling the same, so definitely we recommend going and visiting the breaking room like Scarlett has.
Yeah, the break room looks like somewhere where you can just let off a lot of anger and express yourself really and sort of let it out. And there's things around campus as well with the de-stress week where you can go and pet puppies and there's petting zoos.
Yeah, exactly right. And we always have, a lot of health and fitness opportunities here on campus as well, so you don't have to leave your studies behind. Just take a quick break and let out the stress.
Of course. There was actually an article in the Sydney Morning Herald a couple of weeks ago about how now half of university students want to drop out. And honestly, sometimes I feel the same way. And in 2017, a survey conducted by the National Youth Mental Health Foundation and the National Union of Students revealed that there is an alarming 83% of students admitting to suffering from stress.
Yeah, that is
a huge number. Yeah. 83% of people at La Trobe or any university student suffering from stress. And look, the pressure is one of the biggest factors.
It's on. It's definitely on. It's non-stop. Even when you are stop, you're worrying about, should I be doing more? You always feel like you should constantly keep going and keep working to be the best you can be, but that's not always the case. Yep. As research mentioned in the article, that there was commissioned by Studio City revealed that 51% of Australian university students have thought about abandoning their degree due to the pressure caused by isolated study. Altogether, they just want to quit.
Yeah, and I do know people that have felt the same way and have ended up going part-time, so they delay their graduation just to try and cope with the stress.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of uni students, they're not living at home. They're living on campus or on off-campus housing, so they're paying bills. They've got all of these debts and they're working at the same time. So they're doing full-time study and they've got part-time or casual work as well. And so juggling all of this, of course, they must be so stressed and, I just can't imagine what a lot of students are going through right now.
And it's really upsetting just because our studies are our main priority. We're all here because we want to be here and we love what we do. So having to put it on hold or changing to part-time is really upsetting. Speaking of studies, I really love studying media and communications to the point where I had to leave the country and go study some more. So I studied student exchange over the summer through a company called AIM Overseas, which was a company that runs short-term academic programs over the summer and winter holidays. So let's take a look at that.
Actually, let's talk more about exchange, because I actually went on exchange as well and I found it really interesting.
Oh, really?
I went to California.
Right.
And of course, for students, I know that right now is the planning period for going on exchange. And so they're going through all of the forms that we had to do this time. Well, for me, it was this time last year. You're going through all of the forms and you're trying to get a visa. And I feel like that also is super stressful as a student, but it does pay off. And I had a lot of fun when I was on exchange. I went to California for 5 months at a college called Pitzer College. And I had an amazing time. I met some extraordinary people. There were 25 exchange students, including myself, 2 other Aussies. So I did have that sort of little connection to home. But yeah, being overseas as well, there are international students as well on campus. And so understandably, they might be going through this stress. And you feel it, you feel homesick, but going on exchange is a wonderful opportunity. I know that there will be applications coming through for first semester next year around July.
Yep.
So in a few months, there'll be these applications coming through and you can apply for it. And it's so worth it. Like anyone that I've spoken to about going on exchange or being able to go overseas, has just been amazing.
Absolutely. It's such a great opportunity. It's ironic as well that you went to California. I went to North Carolina in the States. So we both went to America. On the East Coast. Yes, the East Coast. It was beautiful. I got to visit New York as well while I was there. So I did a bit of traveling. I went to the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. So it was very athletic school as well. There was lots of sport going on there. The campus was insane.
The
Massive.
campuses in America are just beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
The one that I was, I mean, they do have very expensive tuitions over there.
Oh,
and so understandably, they've got a lot of donations from families and things like that.
Yeah.
So the campuses are just incredible and there's amazing facilities and gardens. And
oh, it's unreal. It's unreal.
It was like I was at a resort and I was studying. So it was very crazy. I do wish, for anyone listening that does want to go on exchange, I wish that I went for a year.
Oh, really?
I don't know if this is for everyone, but after being back, I kind of do wish that I had spent longer over there. But that being said, I did know people over there. So I felt that it was easier for me to be over there because I did have a support network, which is the most important thing when you go on exchange, having a support network.
That's great that you wanted to stay for that amount of time. I did have a bit of an opposite experience myself. So I stayed for a month and just did a short-term program, but I was pretty ready to come home.
Yeah.
Even though the experience was, irreplaceable, and the things I learnt over there were things I couldn't learn here, and the people I met and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It made me more motivated to actually come back and do my life to more from what I've learnt rather than staying in that exact area, even though, like I said, I would definitely go back and do it all over again if I could. But I was definitely ready to come home.
It is a lot of fun. It's an amazing experience. I feel like you grow a lot as a person, and I know everyone says this.
Absolutely.
But really, I personally feel like I gained a lot of confidence because I was really thrown out of my comfort zone.
Exactly.
And you are in another country, and for me, it was my first time ever being overseas and ever going on a plane by myself. I hadn't been on a plane in about 7 years.
Exactly.
And so
wow.
It was incredible for me to experience all of this by myself. I feel like one of the scariest things though is going into very populated cities. When you're over there, I feel like, because when I went into Los Angeles, it's a very crowded place, and so it can be quite stressful to go into there. But for anyone who wants to go on exchange, it's amazing. Please do it. And yeah, understandably, international students here, if you know any, just be a bit of a support network for them. And just going back to our discussion on mental illness, it's so important to talk to people. It's so important to let people know how you're feeling. There are actually, for those that are listening that are La Trobe students, there are actually counselling services available located in Pribilos East. And you can also contact after hours counselling at 1300 687 327. And you can also contact Lifeline at 13 11 14.
Yeah.
13 11 14 for that number.
Yeah.
It's very important.
For student exchange, it was definitely something that put my mental health through a bit of a struggle. So, but even not in a bad way, just growing as a person, definitely. So all those international students here being thrown into such a big thing to do. I mean, it really does change you as a person. It makes you a better person, a stronger person, and it makes you realise who you really are.
Absolutely. And we've had such a great show today, a fantastic Woman of the Week, hearing from students in hearing from Ivo, actually, about Mojo, which has just been incredible, and also hearing from Jasmine with Ask Jazz,
yes,
which has just been incredible.
Next week will be just as exciting and fun-packed. We'll be bringing you new videos with Lott Smith Pet Rescue Shelter. And you can tweet us live or check us out at Instagram at The Morning Journ. Don't forget.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.